Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss Rebels, continue the offseason moves, going out and making a big one. Now, this might fly under the radar for a lot of the casual college football fans, not for the Ole Miss fans. Going out and hiring former Mississippi State head coach Zach Arnett to join this staff as an analyst heading into 2024. Now, do we have question marks about Zach Arnett as a head coach? Yeah, we certainly do. Do we have question marks about Zach Arnett as a defensive mind? Certainly not. One of the best in the game, and you get a chance to, in my mind, hire a legit Power 5 defensive coordinator as an analyst. Heading into 2024, that's a massive move by Lane Kiffin, and something that is really, I think, flying under the radar for this Ole Miss team is the staff that Lane Kiffin is building, right? We do a lot of conversations about this Ole Miss team from a roster standpoint and how it's one of the most talented rosters that we see not only in the SEC, but in the country. This coaching staff that Lane Kiffin is creating, it is one of the better coaching staffs that you see in the country as well. You go out and get Brian Brown coming over from Cincinnati. I was a massive fan of what he did at Louisville in 2022. I think this is Lane Kiffin kind of having those roots from Nick Saban, right? You look at Nick Saban, what made him one of the best head coaches that we've seen in this sport, the best head coach. Not only did he have a very talented roster, which Ole Miss has heading into 2024, he also had always one of the best coaching staffs in the country. That's what Lane Kiffin is building at Ole Miss over the last couple of years. Want to get into Zach Arnett, talk a little bit about what he brings to this defense. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out, as always, to the Ole Miss fans. It's been a blast talking this program. I've been very outspoken about one of the more exciting teams, one of the teams I'm most excited for in 2024, breaking down commitments, doing the position deep dives. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Zach Arnett. Now, two things that I want to talk about. One, highlighting this coaching staff where you have Pete Golden, who y'all know how I feel about him, going out, getting him from Alabama. He's taken some strides with that defense. You go out and get Brian Brown from Cincinnati, formerly from Louisville, where I was a massive fan of him. Now you go and bring, Zach Arnett. Again, one of the better defensive-minded coaches that I think you see across college football in as an analyst. I think this is massive. Now, let's talk about some of the impacts that we'll see with Zach Arnett joining this staff. Now, yeah, he's not an on-field coach. He's not going to be calling the plays for this Ole Miss defense, but I can bet you that him and Pete Golden are going to be working very closely in two different things. One, game planning. Zach Arnett has a ton of experience in the SEC, but more importantly, how you use this personnel for Ole Miss heading into 2024. And this is a conversation that we've had a lot. You have a lot of versatile players on this Ole Miss defense. What does Zach Arnett, in my mind, really specialize in? Giving a lot of different personnel package looks, a lot of different looks, period, on the defensive side of the football, and using his personnel to the best of their ability. That's one of the biggest talking points in college football that I feel like gets overlooked is you got athletes all over the field on the defensive side of the football. How are you going to use those guys? And the one guy I want to talk about, a guy that we've talked about plenty over the last couple of weeks, is Suntarine Perkins. And this is a guy that Ole Miss fans probably familiar with, Nathaniel Watson from Mississippi State over the last couple of years, a guy that had 10 sacks last year for Mississippi State, over 20 quarterback hurries. I wonder if we've always said, like, how are we going to use Suntarine Perkins heading into 2024? Probably the best athlete on this Ole Miss defense, a guy that is extremely talented, can do a lot of different things. I think the big question is, how do we get him on the field more and utilize him in a lot of different situations? I kind of compared him a little bit to Harold Perkins at LSU. You look at what Mississippi State did with Nathaniel Watson in terms of a blitzing linebacker that really had his fingerprints all over defense, right? You saw him blitzing the A and B gaps. You saw him blitzing as almost an edge rusher at times. That is kind of the blueprint I think that you want to see Perkins be used in 2024. And I think Zach Arnett showed that he can use a guy and Nathaniel Watson to do a lot of those things that I think Ole Miss wants to use Perkins for heading into 2024. And let's just be fair. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Nathaniel Watson. He was a phenomenal player for Mississippi State. Suntarine Perkins is just on another level in terms of the athleticism, in terms of what he can do on the defensive side of the football. The thing that popped into my mind at first was, what is Zach Arnett going to have how is that conversation going to go with Pete Golden in terms of, hey, we got this kind of freak show athlete in Suntarine Perkins. We got to be able to use him. I think that's what I'm most excited for with Zach Arnett joining the staff. Again, he brings a ton of experience game planning in the SEC. He's a phenomenal recruiter. And again, not a position coach, not necessarily traveling on the recruiting trail, but a guy that if you were play defense, you want to go play for this kind of coach. And a guy that I think is a very, very good developer of defenses. And I guess you'd say, like, how to use your personnel. You take a look at the development of personnel that happened at Mississippi State. Talk about guys like Martin Emerson, Emmanuel Forbes. Mississippi State did a phenomenal job developing guys on the defensive side of the football, and you kind of hope that Zach Arnett comes in and stimulates some of that development. And you take a look at this Ole Miss team heading into 2024. Yes, this roster, we've talked about it a lot, right? This offense is going to be one of the best offenses that we see in the country. When you have Lane Kiffin running an offense with Jackson Dart at quarterback, Juice Wells, Trey Harris, it is going to be a special offense. And it goes back to Lane Kiffin looking at this Ole Miss team heading into 2024 and say, hey, where can we make that 1% jump to catch the teams like Georgia and Alabama? And bringing in Zach Arnett, a guy that is extremely creative as a defensive mind, a guy that did a phenomenal job forcing turnovers at Mississippi State as their defensive coordinator. This is a guy that makes you 1% better. And again, flying under the radar, coming in as an analyst. I think this is a massive get for Ole Miss and building a really impressive coaching staff to go along with one of the more talented rosters that you see in college football. We'll leave it at that. This is probably a conversation that we'll have over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.